Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATV 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katv.org. My name is Cammie and I'm here with my co-host Betty. How you doing today, Betty?
Very well. Good afternoon, Cammie.
Yes. So glad to be here today. We are excited to have Amanda Nelson in our studio. Hi, Amanda.
Hello.
She is here to talk to us today about international adoption. Such an interesting topic, not something a lot of us know a lot about, but she's going to share with us a lot of the fears and the excitement and just in general the process around that, and a lot about her own personal story of walking through and navigating that process. So just to get us started, Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have been married for 10 years. We have 3 children, 2 biological children, and our youngest is adopted and she is 4.
Wow. So 3 kiddos all
Yes.
together there. Go ahead, Betty.
Amanda, how did you meet your husband?
We met in college, actually. We were on the same track team. He didn't join until my senior year. And so we met my senior year and dated for about 2 months before I graduated and moved back to Alaska.
2 whole months.
2 whole months. Yep.
Okay, tell us what's so amazing about your husband. Just two things.
Okay.
Because we know the list
we'll
is
keep it
long.
short.
Right?
He's very patient with me. I can be very stubborn, but he handles it very well. And we both love students. We love to minister to students together, so that was one of the things we initially bonded over.
So when you were dating, did the two of you talk about adoption?
Yes. Actually, it came up in probably our second conversation, was that we both had a desire to adopt internationally. Whether or not we ever had biological children, that was not really a factor in it.
And why international? Why international and not a child from the United States? Because there's so many children that need a home here.
I'm not sure. God just laid it on both of our hearts to adopt internationally, and some people he calls to adopt domestically in the U.S., and some he calls to adopt internationally to get all of his work done.
So what is the backstory of both of you having that desire, though, Amanda? I mean, had you guys seen adoption in your own families, or what kind of prompted that passion and desire?
Daryl had his grandpa adopted a girl from Vietnam, but that didn't really affect his decision. He said he went to a Stephen Curtis Chapman concert, and he talked about adopting, and that was when he really first felt like that was what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but how many years had you been married when you decided to pursue this dream?
Let's see. Our middle child was 6 months old, which make Evan 3. So we've been married for about 4 years when we decided to pursue this.
And you already had 2 children at the time.
Yes. A baby, too.
Okay, now we want to hear the story.
It's really weird. We both just had been praying about it the whole time we were married, and one day after lunch, we just both at the same time said, I think we're ready to do this. It was really very God ordained because we both just didn't know we were both praying about it.
How did you even get started? How did you know where to go, or who to talk to, or what to do?
That is a long process. I thankfully knew someone that I had taken piano lessons with when I was little. We had kept in touch through Facebook, and she was a social worker with an international adoption agency. So I contacted her and asked her who the best ones were, who was reliable to make sure that these kids were actually abandoned and not stolen or whatever, because that's a big issue with international adoption. And so she gave me the names of the 2 agencies that she thought were the best, and we looked into them and kind of decided based on who had what programs.
And then what was the process like?
Very long.
Define long.
Very long. So from the time we applied until the time we went to pick up our daughter was almost exactly 3 years, which is actually kind of on the short side for international adoption.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. So
Yes.
what's the first thing that you had to do?
The first thing we had to do was apply to the adoption agency to get approved for the specific country that we had decided on.
Which was?
Thailand. And so that was our first step.
And then what?
Then there was a lot of waiting. We had to get our home study done, and that was done locally. Catholic Social Services came out and did that. They were great. And we turned in our home study, which made us eligible for Thailand to actually approve us. We couldn't get approved for an adoption until that was done. They had to know we were safe. And then we just waited for a referral every 3 months.
Did you have to do anything special to your home to make it? Were there any requirements that they had?
Each country has different requirements. Thailand has very few as far as your home, probably because a majority of their country is a third world country. So they don't have a whole lot of requirements, whereas if you adopt domestically, there are a lot of requirements for your home.
So what were some of the challenges and setbacks that you guys experienced as you walked through that process? Anything particular?
A lot of the waiting was very hard. Not so much before we had our referral, but once we had her picture and we knew that she was growing up without us and taking her first steps without us, that was very, very hard emotionally on both of us. And it was hard on the kids because they kept asking when she was coming and when are we going to pick her up and why can't we go get her, which was all the questions we were asking, but they're little and so they asked out loud.
You know, I want to ask you too, because it was so awesome to follow your guys' story, thinking clear back to the beginning of the process on Facebook and just watching your family come together and bond through this process. But tell us a little bit about how, when you filled out the application, and forgive me if I use the wrong terms here, but when you filled out the application saying this is kind of what we're looking for, and tell us how God changed that through the process.
Yes, that the application that you have to fill out is very all-inclusive. They don't want you to take on more than you can handle. So the application lists all kinds of medical, emotional, and physical disabilities very extensively. And so you have to go through and check what you can handle. And so it was very hard to pray over that application because, you know, every time you checked, no, our family can't handle this, you were essentially saying no to a child. So that was very hard for us to go through that form. We ended up through prayer and talking to other people who've been through the process, that deciding for our family because of my nursing background and the capabilities that our house had. The only children we would say no to were children that had communicable diseases because we had 2 children in our home already. So that was a very hard process, praying through that form and deciding, what we would be open to as far as bringing a child into our home with disabilities.
And accepting those challenges kind of up front without fully knowing what all that was going to entail.
Yes, because it is a lot. I mean, you feel bad saying no, but you have to be ready to sign on to that if you're going to say yes. So yeah, it was very hard.
So what happens when they bring, do they kind of let you know, hey, we've got these children available that kind of fit the desires that you have, and then you can accept, or how does that work? That
is how the process works with our adoption agency. They're a Christian adoption agency, which was wonderful and a huge blessing. They pray with you over the phone. It's amazing. They pray over all of their referrals that they get from the countries.
Wow.
That the families that they're referring them to would be the right families, and that if they're not the right families, that they would say no. So that is wonderful. It was wonderful to know that they were praying with us and that they were as concerned about it being the right thing as we were. So they would get a group of anywhere from 2 to 5 children from the country of Thailand every 4 months. And then they would send out, for the healthy children, it went by the list, who was next up on the list that wanted a healthy child. But then for children that weren't completely healthy, they went into an email. And those of us already in process with the country had first choice on whether or not we were willing to adopt that child.
Wow.
It's amazing.
So did you have several children to choose from, or did they send you your little girl's picture and say, this is the child that we have for you? We sort of stumbled across her. They had gotten a weird referral group. Normally with Thailand, they refer kids every 4 months to our adoption agency. For some reason, a month after a referral group, she had become available for adoption, and they decided to send her file to our adoption agency. So they sent out an email to everybody in process saying, she just became available. If you would like to adopt her, you guys get to put in your application before we release her to the website to everybody. And Daryl called me. I hadn't checked my email that day and said, there is a little girl that I really feel like we're supposed to adopt. Check your email. So I opened up my email, and when I first saw her picture, I was like, yep, we are supposed to adopt her. It was very strange. How old was she at the time?
1. She just had her first birthday.
When did you get to meet her?
Wait a minute, Betty. Wait a minute. You're jumping ahead here. We have to build this. I'm so interested in every single step because before you go there, I want to hear about the anticipation. Like, when did you know it was, say, 60 days out that you were going to get to head out and actually see her?
Well, we didn't. That's kind of the thing with international adoption. It comes up automatically. We waited for 15 months from the time we got her picture until we were told we could travel to go get her. And then we had 16 days to make travel arrangements and pack and get our children taken care of at home.
Really? 16 days?
Yes. It was crazy.
Okay, so take us back to the emotions that you and Daryl were feeling during that 16 days as you I'm sure a lot of it was consumed with just getting things ready, on the home front to leave. But what were your emotions at that time?
We were very overwhelmed. We knew that it could be coming up because with our agency in the country, you're supposed to get your referral within 6 to 7 months. But Thailand had a huge flood, so they were really backed up in the government agency. They had a government shutdown. We had a government shutdown. There was just a lot of things that happened that kind of extended our process. And when we got the call with 16 days, it was actually right before Fusion, which Daryl is in charge of. So he was sort of busy with that, so it kind of all fell to me, and he was super overwhelmed with trying to figure out traveling to an international country, but he had to take care of this first. So his mom offered to come up and take care of the kids, so that was taken care of immediately, which was wonderful. We were missing the first day of school for Gavin for first grade. We were missing Michaela's birthday. So there was a lot of emotions
oh my goodness
involved with the timing that God had.
Yeah.
Because it would not have been the time that we had picked. It was actually the one time of year we were praying it would not happen.
Here it comes.
Yes. Yes.
So fast forward through that 16 days. Now you guys are at the airport. You're on the airplane. Things are settled at home and you're on your way.
Yes.
What are you thinking at this time?
It was a lot. I cried a lot because we had never left our kids for more than 5 days. And so I cried a lot. Pretty much the whole way from Anchorage to Seattle, I was crying, and poor Daryl was very patient with that. But it was tears that's sad that we were leaving them, but also just the emotion of knowing we were finally going to get to meet her and she was going to be coming home, and this thing that we'd been waiting for 3 years was really going to happen. Even though the whole time it's going to happen, it's still very real when it finally does happen.
Okay, Betty, now.
Now I can ask.
Yes.
What was going through your mind on the day that you finally got to meet her?
We were very quiet all morning. They bring the children to your hotel room at 10 o'clock in the morning. She was actually the only child being adopted that week from our adoption agency, so we had everybody's full attention the whole time. So we knew it was going to be around 10. They were a little bit late, which was great because we were sitting there watching the clock. But so we were really quiet all morning, just really prayerful, praying that she wouldn't freak out. A lot of the kids don't want to be touched. They've never seen someone that's not Thai before. A lot of the kids live in families where the dad has to work all the time, so they've never really spent much time around a man. So that was very concerning for Daryl, was what was her reaction to him going to be. So it was just a lot of prayer that God had prepared her, and we knew we were prepared, but it was still a lot of just being quiet, waiting for the knock on the door.
And when they brought her to you, what was your first reaction?
Mostly awe, just as she walked through the door, like that she was actually there. She wasn't this picture that we were staring at anymore. She was walking through the door, and they had prepared her. She was super cute. She bowed to us. That's how they greet in their culture. So, yes, it was just very...
How old was she at that time?
2.5. 2.5. 2 years and 3 months.
And did she respond to Daryl? I know Daryl's very, very tall.
Yes. It was interesting. We sat down and they tried to make us play with her. They tell you not to pick them up, which is incredibly hard because all you want to do is pick them up. So we sat down and played with her. And after about 10 minutes... we went outside with her, and she let us pick her up, and it was super incredible because we'd met people whose child wouldn't let them pick them up for 6 months. So it was even the social workers were amazed at how quickly she just accepted us and was ready.
How long were you in Thailand before you could bring her home?
14 days.
And during those 14 days, did you get to spend them all with her?
Most of them. The first day we were there, we did not. We got there late on Friday night, and we met her Sunday morning. And then we got physical custody of her on Monday, and she spent the rest of the time with us. So after the first time we met her, we traveled to her foster home to meet her foster family, and then we had to leave her there and go back to our hotel for a night.
I know that was terrible.
It was. It probably wouldn't have been as bad if she had not actually cried when we left and wanted to come with us. That was very hard. We knew she didn't understand why we were leaving her.
Mm-hmm.
So you flew to Thailand with just you and Daryl, and now you're coming back with another child. What was the plane trip like? The plane ride back with her?
She cried for like 32 hours.
Oh.
It was very rough. She'd never been on a plane. She'd definitely never even seen one up close. And she had an amazing foster family. She was their 16th foster child. And so we believe they really prepared her for what was happening. She was doing most of her grieving on the airplane.
So now you have 2 children waiting to meet their new sister.
Yes.
How did you prepare them?
We watched a lot of videos of people coming home with their children so that they could see sort of the apprehension and kind of the adopted kids holding back so that they would know it wasn't abnormal when their sister did it. So we watched a lot of those videos with them, and we prepared them that she might not want them to touch her. She might not really want them to talk to her at all. She definitely wasn't going to understand what they were saying because she didn't know English. So we just kind of prepared them more that way. They were a little too young to read books about it and really understand it. So it was mostly visual with videos.
Okay, so I want to know, how did it go when they first met?
It actually went amazing. She loved them. She knew them right away because her foster family had showed them all the pictures that we had sent of them and us, and it was really sweet. She held hands with both of them on the way home from the airport in the car, and initially they did great. The meeting went very well, which was good for all of them, that's what they remember.
So you left as a family of 4, came back as a family of 5.
Yes.
What have these last 2 years been like?
Up and down, a lot of ups and downs. They have their moments. The first week was probably great. They were all kind of in that honeymoon period where they were meeting each other, and it was so exciting. And then they were permanent siblings, and they got along like normal permanent siblings. Here. Exactly. Oh, okay. She's really 2, and she wants to play with my toys, and she wants to pull my hair, and she wants you to hold her, and I want you to hold me. And so yes, they became normal siblings very quickly. But yeah, the ups and downs of them getting used to having an adopted sibling that we don't really discipline the same way, because in the beginning she didn't have the same relationship with them that we had. We got to raise them from babies, and they grew up trusting us, and she didn't grow up that way, so we had to build that bond. And so for them to understand that the rules were going to be a little different for her than they were for them was definitely a challenge.
What were some of the resources that you found helpful through that transition?
Lots of books. The Connected Child was a book that our adoption agency had recommended to us, and it was very helpful. It was actually really helpful. It's a book for adopted parents, but I felt like it was helpful with the other 2 kids too. Just a lot of things about eye contact is how you bond with people, and that's how you bond with children. And so it's just a lot of being aware of your body language as you're dealing with your kids.
Excellent. And then have we mentioned our Facebook page yet? I don't think we have.
No,
Why don't you take a
not.
minute and tell us about that?
So after our social worker, they do 3 visits with us. So at 6 months after we had her, she kind of was like, all right, we're done. You're on your own. And that felt very overwhelming. So we're just on our own now here in Alaska with nobody else that has adopted from Thailand. So I decided to start a Facebook page for moms that were fostering and adopting, because it can be very lonely. A lot of times you're overwhelmed. You have kids at home, and you can't necessarily get out and meet other moms, especially other adoptive moms who have their kids with their own set of problems, and they can't get out of their house either. So it sort of became an online support community for people that needed it and had questions that they just couldn't get answered. And It's been wonderful.
That is
It really
tremendous.
has.
And how many women are on that forum or that Facebook page now?
We have around 400 now.
Wow.
And what's
Who
the
would've
name of
thought?
the Facebook page?
Alaska Adoptive and Foster Moms.
Is it private? Can anybody join?
Anybody can join, they just have to request because it's not a secret group. They can search it and find it, but it is a closed group. So nobody can see anything we're discussing. They can't see any of the information on the page. They can't see the other members. They can just request to join.
So if anyone in our listening audience had questions about international adoption, would that be a good way for them to contact you?
It would. They can also search me on Facebook because you can message people and it comes up in their other folder even if you're not friends with them on Facebook. But yeah, that is a great community because we do have a couple of people on there that have adopted internationally, and from each of us have adopted from a different country, so it's kind of fun to hear the different processes and all the information that's available.
The thing that I've noticed about the page is that if somebody has a question, there's always 3 or 4 willing to provide an answer, to give them some kind of information, something to help them.
Yes, it is. The women on there are amazing. They are very helpful, and for a group that large, we've never had any problems with it. They're just very helpful and very encouraging, not discouraging at all.
Have you ever met these women?
I have probably met 10 of them. When the group was smaller, when it first started out, and we had about 40 people on the page, we used to meet for dinner, and so I've met some of them, but as it got bigger, that really wasn't an option anymore.
So just in case anybody wants to look you up, they would look for Amanda Nelson here in Anchorage. I'm sure they might find a few. Are there any other Amanda Nelsons here that they might stumble across?
I don't know. Not that I know of.
Okay. Look for the shortest girl and the tallest guy. If that's the profile pic, you've got the right one, right?
Yes.
But just real quick again, state what that Facebook page is where they can connect.
So it's Alaska Adoptive and Foster Moms.
Is Alaska spelled out or is it AK?
It's spelled out.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just want to back up just a tidbit here just before we close the program and have you share with us how you saw God working through the adoption process and directing your steps as you guys walked through that process.
Yes, there was so many examples
Yeah, I'm sure.
of how he just showed us that it was the right thing. There were 2 that were huge for us. The first one was when we originally put in to adopt our daughter, we were not the only family that put in. There was actually 3 other families that had put in their application to adopt her specifically. So there was a process of our adoption agency selecting who it was going to be, and the social worker was very upfront with us that there was more families interested in her, and they said that as a adoption agency, they were going to be praying over the families. They asked all the families to be praying over it. So immediately 2 of the families, when they got her medical profile, said it was just too much for them. They couldn't handle the surgeries. It just wouldn't work for their family. And then there was another family that made it through the first round with us and went to the second round. And so we knew it was going to be between the 2 of us. And about a week in to that process, our adoption agency had called and said that they had decided not to adopt her. And we were in, and we never, it was about 6 months, we didn't know why. And then the lady had found me on a Thailand adoption Facebook page that I'm on and said that as her and her husband were praying through it, God just kept telling them that she was not their child, and that she was somebody else's child. So it was super amazing to get to hear her say that as we had been praying, and we knew that God thought that she was our child, but just that he had revealed that to them and said, not for you.
And provided that confirmation.
Yes,
that
it was
this
amazing.
really is the right thing.
Yep,
Wow.
they actually ended up with twins. It was
Really?
amazing.
Oh
Yes.
my goodness.
I'm sure now that you look at it, you cannot imagine your life without her.
No. And even through the process, as it got discouraging, there were always little things that God would bring into our lives to show us that we were supposed to be waiting. We had to wait it out. And just everything was provided as we had all of our money due, because it is very expensive. We would get grants or people would just give us checks. And it all worked out along the way that every time we had a financial obligation due, the money was there by the deadline. So we just knew the whole way that God was saying, this is what I want you to do.
That's an incredible story.
Is there any advice or encouragement, I want to say, that you would give to a couple that's thinking about adopting internationally or even adopting locally?
The main thing I always tell people when they ask is you both have to be 100% on board. both the husband and the wife. I've had a couple of people that, they're not both 100%. And if you're not both 100%, it will tear you apart because it is a long process. And so I just encourage them to pray together about it and make sure that it's something that God is asking both of them to do, because maybe one of you isn't ready. So maybe God doesn't have that child ready yet. And when both of you are ready, your child will be there.
So Amanda, Betty and I are both going to ask, are you guys looking at doing this again? Are you looking to adopt more children?
We have talked about it, and if God gave us another child, we would be open to it, but he would have to make it pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are all 3 kids in school?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, Kanika is not in school yet. She will start next year.
Then you might seriously consider adopting another.
Exactly.
When the house is empty.
Yes. Yes.
That's when it will become more clear.
Yes, for sure.
Well, again, we want to thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on Living Well today and just sharing your story. We know there's got to be women out there or families listening that can relate to your story or are just encouraged by you walking through that process and how that can apply to them and kind of help guide them through. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Again, you can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org. We'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you.